Good morning, everyone. Happy Problem Gambling Awareness Month. My name is Dr. Chandra Parks. I am here with the Maryland Council and I'm here with the MCPG team, and we're excited about Problem Gambling Awareness Month. It is our opportunity that we get to share valuable information, valuable resources, and valuable stories as relates to risky gambling behavior and how we are able to support individuals who are dealing with risky gambling behavior as well as their families. We want to thank you for just joining in and just listening to some of the valuable stories. And this month, we have a theme of where we are honoring voices, reducing the stigma, and promoting recovery. So we have two wonderful speakers during our time together that will share their story, their lessons, and how they are navigating the healing process. So sit back, listen, and we welcome you during this time. So our first speaker is Matt S. I'm just going to let him share his story.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt S. Thank you, Dr. Parks. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt S., and I'm a compulsive gambler. This is my story of how I developed gambling addiction, how it affected my life, the people around me, and how I eventually found my way to recovery. I want to start by stating that sharing my story is not easy. Talking about addiction, especially gambling addiction, means revisiting moments I'm not proud of and experiences that were deeply painful for both me and the people who care about me. But I've learned that discomfort has value and that there is a purpose in being honest. By sharing my lived experience, my goal isn't sympathy or judgment, it's understanding. Gambling addiction is often misunderstood, minimized, or invisible from the outside. By speaking about what it actually looked like in my life, I hope to help others better understand how this addiction develops, how it operates, and how deeply it can affect someone long term before anyone realizes there's a problem. My story helps even one person recognize signs they didn't see before, feel less alone, or understand that recovery is possible when the discomfort of sharing is worth it. I was introduced to gambling at the age of 16 by a close friend. At the time, I had no idea what a bookie was or how betting even worked. I didn't understand odds, payouts, or the risk involved. My friend explained the basics to me, how bets were placed, how money was tracked, and how everything worked, which made the whole process seem simple and harmless. One of the most important details early on was that I didn't have to put any money down up front. I was given credit instead. Because I wasn't physically depositing money, it didn't feel real to me. It felt like play money, which made it easy to bet without fully understanding the responsibility or consequences attached to it. The betting took place through offshore, unregulated sports books with no age verification or safeguards. Because of that, access was easy and consistent despite being underage, and there was nothing in place to slow me down or make me question whether I should be doing it. As an athlete who closely followed sports, betting didn't feel like gambling. I watched games constantly, paid attention to matchups, injuries, and trends, and genuinely believed my knowledge gave me an edge. It felt more like strategy than risk. Before I started gambling and throughout this time, I was working a job. Having my own income meant I had access to more money than most people my age, which made the behavior feel manageable at first. I started with small bets and believed I was being responsible. For the first few months, things went well overall. I was mostly profitable, and those early wins reinforced the belief that I had control and that my approach was working. During this period, I began convincing myself that I wasn't gambling, I was building a skill. I told myself I was getting good at it, that I understood sports betting better than most people, and that I could eventually make a career out of it. That belief became a major justification for continuing and escalating because quitting would have meant admitting that the future I imagined for myself wasn't real. As time went on, that sense of control slowly faded. I increased my bet sizes and started gambling more often. Losses became harder to accept, and instead of stepping back, I felt pressure to win the money back quickly. That's when my decisions became emotional rather than logical, and I began betting money I didn't actually have. Around the same time, gambling began to interfere with school. I was spending so much time betting, watching games, tracking outcomes, and chasing losses that I fell behind academically. I eventually had to take summer classes just to graduate high school. At the time, I downplayed it, but looking back, it was one of the first clear signs that gambling had taken priority over my responsibilities and long-term goals. As the losses grew, I fell into a pattern of avoiding and ghosting bookies because I couldn't pay them back. Over time, my pattern of avoiding bookies when I couldn't pay them back became something I was known for. What made that especially difficult was realizing that bookies in my area seemed to know who I was, even ones I had never personally dealt with. My reputation spread within the circle without me fully understanding it at the time. Because of this, I found myself constantly having to shop around for new bookies just to keep gambling, which only pushed me deeper into the cycle. Many of these bookies had been introduced to me by friends, which meant my actions didn't just affect me, they directly impacted my relationships. Trust started to break down and my standing within my community suffered. People became hesitant to let me gamble on their books because they didn't believe they would be repaid. During this period, when I ghosted bookies, I began receiving serious threats. I was sent messages threatening harm toward me, my family, and my friends. In the most extreme instance, I was told that a convoy of cars with assault rifle weapons would be sent to my house to shoot it up and kill anyone inside. Even though part of me didn't fully believe it would happen, I knew it wasn't something I could ignore. I told my dad what was going on, and he went into our gun safe to grab a shotgun while we waited to see if anyone showed up. I even walked across the street to warn my neighbor, who was an FBI agent, that something serious might happen. Thankfully, nothing ever did, but this was one of the few times I was genuinely scared for my life because of my gambling and the behaviors that have followed. Eventually, every paycheck I earned went straight toward gambling related losses. It felt like I was working just to stay afloat with nothing to show for it. Gambling was no longer exciting or enjoyable. It was stressful, exhausting, and consuming. Up until I turned 21, all of my gambling had been through bookies. When I eventually became of legal age and began betting on regulated apps and websites, things didn't get better. They actually got a lot worse. In some ways, legal betting felt safer and more legitimate, and I actually preferred it. It felt sanctioned and normal, which gave me another reason to justify what I was doing. At that time, it introduced a new dangerous problem. I now had to pay to play. There was no more credit. Every bet required real money upfront. The shift is when theft truly began to escalate, as I was constantly scrambling to come up with cash just to keep gambling. Around the same time, I met my ex-girlfriend. She noticed that I had a gambling problem, as it interfered with our relationship and our daily life. Not long after, I began stealing large sums of money from her to support my gambling. Even then, I knew deep down that I had a serious problem, but I refused to admit to myself. Admitting it would have meant confronting my ego and everything I had justified up to that point. Eventually, our relationship ended as a direct result of my gambling and the damage it caused. As the addiction worsened, I became extremely manipulative and deceptive. Although I had always had a moral compass and knew right from wrong, I reached a point where I convinced myself I was too far gone and there was no point in turning back. That belief became an excuse to keep me going. My focus shifted entirely to protecting myself and covering my own mistakes, often with complete disregard for the people around me who were directly impacted. As my behavior continued to spiral, my parents began forcing me to attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings. At the time, I had no intention of taking them seriously. I showed up physically, but I wasn't there mentally or emotionally. My only goal was to appease my parents and the people around me in hopes of relieving pressure they were putting on me, not to actually stop gambling or change my behavior. I listened just enough to say the right things afterward, but I didn't internalize anything that was being shared. I told myself I was different from the people in those rooms, that my situation wasn't as bad, or that I could still control it on my own. In reality, I was still actively gambling, sometimes even placing bets while sitting in those meetings. Attending became just another tactic, another layer of deception that I used to create the appearance that I was trying to get better so I could continue to gamble without interference. Looking back, it was one of the clearest examples of how dishonest I had become, not just with others, but with myself. I began stealing money from family and friends, looking for cash advances wherever I could, selling personal and household items, and even considering selling my car just to finance my gambling. I became a familiar face at pawn shops, banks, and ATMs. My life revolved around finding money, placing bets, and dealing with the consequences afterwards. At the same time, I was also stealing large sums of money from my dad. I discovered his ATM pin and began withdrawing money in a calculated and deliberate way. I paid close attention to timing and amounts, spacing withdrawals out so they wouldn't immediately trigger alerts or notify him. I told myself I'd pay him back, and I used that promise as further justification for what I was doing. In my mind, that made it feel temporary and somehow acceptable. This was one of the clearest examples of how bad my behavior had really become. I wasn't acting impulsively. I was planning, manipulating, and rationalizing my actions in order to keep gambling. That continued until the bank eventually flagged the activity and contacted the police for theft of my father's money. That ultimately led to a sit-down conversation with my parents that changed everything. It was one of the hardest moments of my life. Sitting across from them, I could see the exhaustion, fear, and heartbreak on their faces. They told me they had reached a point where they didn't know how to help me anymore as parents, and that watching me destroy myself for years had taken an emotional toll they couldn't put into words. They gave me an ultimatum that they never thought they'd have to give their own child. Either they would press charges and allow the legal process to move forward, or I would commit to getting real help at a rehab center. Hearing that made the situation feel real in a way it never had before. It made it clear how far things had gone and how much strain my addiction had placed on the people closest to me. They told me it was painless to feel so helpless, to worry about whether I would improve and what the future would look like if things stayed the same. For the first time, I couldn't minimize what I had done or talk my way out of it. I saw the pain I had caused and realized that my addiction wasn't just ruining my life, it was slowly breaking my parents'. That conversation stripped away every excuse I had left and forced me to face the reality that I couldn't keep living the way I was. Something had to change or everything would be lost. All in all, the conversation led me being sent to rehab in Prescott, Arizona. By the time I got there, I had fully conceded. There was no part of me still trying to negotiate, justify, or hold on to gambling in the background. For the first time, I wasn't resisting help. I genuinely wanted it. I saw rehab as my golden ticket, my real opportunity to reset my life, and I was determined not to waste it. I initially agreed to stay for 30 days, but once I was immersed into the program, I made the decision to extend my stay to 60 days. I didn't want a quick fix. I wanted to understand myself, my addiction, and my patterns at the deepest level possible. I participated in group therapy daily, individual therapy weekly, and attended more than 10 meetings in a week. Not all of them were Gamblers Anonymous, but every meeting taught me something valuable about myself and recovery. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. I was living alongside people who truly understood addiction. Many of them had stories far worse than mine, which gave me perspective and gratitude rather than comparison. I realized how close I had come to losing everything and how fortunate I was to be given the chance to stop when I did. Those 60 days weren't just about abstaining from gambling. I was actively rewiring my brain every single day. I learned how addiction overrides logic, hijacks decision making, and erodes willpower. Through repetition, structure, and consistency, I began rebuilding the ability to pause, think, and choose differently. For the first time, I felt like I had real control over my life. When I returned home after rehab, I was ready to live a life without gambling. I had a structured routine in place built around consistency, accountability, and honesty. I immediately began working closely with my sponsor, attending meetings regularly, and picking up old hobbies and activities to stay busy. Most importantly, I committed to a hard truth. I can never return to that lifestyle. I am not someone who can place one bet and stop. Accepting that has been one of the most freeing parts of my recovery. Today, I have 9 months of sobriety and active recovery. There was a time when I couldn't imagine a life without gambling. Now every aspect of my life is better than I ever thought possible. My relationships are stronger, my drive and ambition are back, my compassion for myself and others has returned. I've learned to love myself again. The version of me that existed during my addiction does not define my character or who I am today. I'm proud of the person I've become. I can look at myself in the mirror and genuinely feel good about who I see and the life I'm building. This is a life I once thought was impossible and one I'm deeply grateful to be living. One of the most important things I want people to understand is that gambling addiction is not a moral failure, a lack of discipline, or a simple problem of willpower. It is a serious mental health disorder and it can be fatal. Gambling addiction has one of the highest suicide rates out of any addiction, which speaks to how deeply isolating, overwhelming, and psychologically destructive it is. Gambling is often referred to as a hidden addiction, and for good reason. Unlike drugs or alcohol, there are no obvious physical signs. There's no smell, no track marks, no visible intoxication. A person can look completely fine on the outside while their life is falling apart internally. Because of this, gambling addiction can go undetected for years by friends, family, coworkers, and even the person themselves. This addiction doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, income level, intelligence, or social status. It directly hijacks the brain's reward system in the same way substance addictions do. Over time, the brain becomes conditioned to chase the dopamine rush associated with risk, anticipation, and the illusion of control. Logic slowly gets overridden and decision-making becomes impaired. One of the most misunderstood aspects of gambling addiction is that frequency does not define the problem. Someone can gamble once a month and still be a problem gambler. What defines addiction is the impact it has on a person's life, emotionally, mentally, financially, and relationally. If gambling causes distress, secrecy, obsession, or harm, it is a problem regardless of how often it happens. Another key concept people need to understand is chasing losses. The belief that I'm due for a win or that someone can gamble their way out of debt is not logical thinking. It is a symptom of the addiction itself. The brain convinces the person that the next bet will fix everything, even as evidence continues to prove otherwise. At that point, gambling is no longer about money. It's about relief, escape, and trying to undo emotional pain. The damage caused by gambling addiction goes far beyond finances. While money loss is often the most visible consequence, the deeper damage includes destroyed relationships, loss of trust, job loss, legal problems, constant anxiety, depression, and overwhelming shame. Many people suffering from gambling addiction live in a state of chronic stress and fear, carrying secrets that feel impossible to escape. Because gambling is socially normalized through sports, casinos, apps, and advertising, it's often minimized or dismissed. But accessibility and normalization don't make it harmless. In fact, they make it more dangerous. Easy access allows the addiction to progress rapidly before anyone realizes how serious it has become. Most importantly, people struggling with gambling addiction are not weak. They are not broken. They are not beyond help. Addiction thrives in silence and shame, but recovery begins with understanding, compassion, and honesty. When people recognize gambling addiction for what it truly is, a serious mental health condition, it becomes easier to support those who are suffering and encourage them to seek help before it's too late. Would like to close by taking a moment to sincerely thank everyone involved for giving me this opportunity to share my story. I don't take this lightly. Being able to speak about my experience not only helps raise awareness, but it also plays a meaningful role in my recovery. Thank you for creating the space for these conversations and for allowing me to be part of them.
Thank you, Matt S., for sharing your story. I'm just amazed and I'm grateful for you sharing our story, what it's like, what it feels like, and that hope is available, that recovery is possible. So, once again, thank you for sharing and the words of wisdom that you shared with our audience. Thank you so very much.
What an incredible recovery sharing. Thank you, Matt. And so, our next speaker, we're excited to introduce you to another recovery story, another lived experience journey is Benjamin B. I'm going to turn it over to Benjamin B. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Benjamin B. I'm a compulsive gambler. My date of my last bet is September 30th, 2025. Um, just to begin, um, I am a compulsive gambler. I started when I was 17 years old. I was introduced to gambling from friends around the beginning of COVID, the pandemic. There was a lot of loneliness. There was a lot of time by yourself. There was a lot of, intrigue from friends sharing this new thing to me. I was introduced while playing basketball outside in a front yard. and and you know, it really became a problem for me down the line. When I was introduced to gambling, much like Matt shared in his story, I was introduced to bookies online, playing with credit, not real money. I was completely hooked in right away. I gambled every single day from the start until I went off to rehab late on, and I'll share about that later. Um, when I first gambled, I felt like it was a release. It was an escape. It was everything that I needed during a time which that there was nothing else going on. I didn't have much else to do. School was limited. I was in high school. It was in my senior year, and there was nothing else to do except just, gamble all day. But when I really started to have my problem was in college. I went off to college, Penn State University, was very excited. It was my dad's school. It was my dream place. And my first few years of college were great. I enjoyed it, had lots of fun, but then things started to wear down on me as I got through. My classes got harder, pressure ramped up, and I failed to deliver on, promising excellent grades and results. So as I went through college, I started to ramp up my gambling further and started to get myself into trouble with bookies. And I started to borrow money from friends and couldn't pay it back or couldn't pay the bookies. And like very much shared in the previous story, I was in trouble with multiple bookies who had found out who I was and developed a reputation as a gambler who could not pay back his debt. So going forward from there, I, I just blew off multiple bookies, didn't pay them back anything, ghosted them, blocked them on social media, and left them hanging in the dark. And then I got a threat sent to me by one of the bookies, and I just cut him off, hoping it was nothing, and just trying to move forward and keep on gambling, further my addiction, and just act like it was not there and not happening to me. And that kept on going, cycling years and years. And then eventually I got onto the offshore sports books that did not require you to be 21. You just had to be 18. And I used those without regulation or oversight for a year. Um, just deposited everything I had. Whenever I got a paycheck from doing work up at school or doing work at home, I would go straight into the account and I'd gamble it away. Then eventually, to just further my addiction, I borrowed money. I stole money from family and friends. Um, Said I would pay it back, but no, that wasn't on the top of my mind. I was just focused on furthering my addiction further and not worried about other people around me. I had a deep care for other people, and I was always generous and kind to others, but when this addiction hit, it completely ruined my moral compass, and just the right and wrong was not sticking in my head. So I just blew off other people, completely prioritized myself, and was very selfish during my addiction. And I did not care how others around me felt. And looking back at that, that's probably the single biggest regret that I have is how I treated people during my addiction. Just completely neglected others around me and, and just did not think twice. Um, and then from there, excuse me, from there, I turned 21, and that is absolutely when it got a lot worse. Right within 15 minutes of, turning 21, I was already logging in all the legal sports apps, um, just trying to sign up and get all the bonuses I could. And there would be some short-term wins, but we all know I'm just going to lose that right back, and I did. I continued on with the legal sports books for a year. Um, I used cash advances to get more money to play with on those sports books. I even attempted to do ACH transactions through sports books when I had no money in my account, and many of the sports books let me do them. So I was just putting up a massive negative on my bank account to finance my gambling. And that was just a gut wrencher, to know that there was no limit to me and where I could go and how much money I could use to gamble and just lose it all. From there, um, they eventually cut me off at a certain amount. Um, there was nowhere left to go, so I started to steal money from my family, um, to finance my gambling further. And then, um, from there, we had a earth to Jesus moment with my family. I had to come clean about what I was doing and the the free fall that I've had. We've had quite a couple of these over the months, um, in my junior year of college, but this one felt different. I was in a whirlwind, and my grades were slipping, and my graduation was looking very bleak, and I needed a new path. And so I was given an ultimatum by my mom: go to rehab and help yourself, or you'll be kicked out of the house and not allowed to live here anymore. So obviously, I chose the rehabilitation. It was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. I was shown this rehabilitation program by Ken Wolfson at Maryland Center for Excellence on Problem Gambling. He was very helpful to me during this process, the few months before I went to rehab. He was connecting with me on a weekly basis, giving me encouragement, and tried to help me to go forward with resources to help me stop my gambling. So I went to rehab in Williamsville Wellness, which was in Virginia. I did a 21-day program. It was easily the most important moment in my life, and I think it was the big turning point for me. Um, During my time at Williamsville Wellness, I had several individual meetings, group meetings, GA meetings. I met other people that were dealing with gambling addictions as well as alcohol and drugs. Just having that mindset of being with other people and hearing their stories and being able to bounce ideas off of them was single-handedly the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Um, it was very motivational to see the other stories and see the people so, motivated to get rid of their addiction or to quit their addiction. The addiction will always live with you. You can't, move on from that entirely, but the motivation um, to move and try to stop what's going on and to better their lives was, um, inspiring. So it really put that inside of me. At first, when I went to rehab, I really did not want to be there. I was very much against going. I did not like the idea of that. But after I got there and spent a few days there, it was obvious that it was the best thing that could have happened to me, even beyond just getting the help for gambling. You know, regaining a sense of confidence and learning who I truly am again, and tapping into other things. Like, we had activities we would do there. We'd play games, we'd socialize, we'd talk about our lives, what we have to look forward to, and just being able to go through that and experience that firsthand was inspiring, and the best thing, really. I say this again, it's really the best thing that could have ever happened to me. So after that, I went back home. I did an IOP program, um, and then went down to an OP program for several months to transition from rehab back to the outside world. Um, I will say a lot of people that were in the IOP program were not gamblers, but mostly alcohol and drug addictions, but it was still very helpful nonetheless. I felt like I had a unique perspective in the room, and it was helpful in guiding the people around me in something that was not the norm. A gambling addiction is a rising addiction. It is most certainly to be taken seriously. It's not something that you can just shrug off and ignore. Gambling addiction, like Matt said, has the highest suicide rate of any addiction, and it can really pose a problem to anyone that comes across. And I know multiple people in my rehabilitation program were going through that. So it's definitely not something to snuff at. After months in the IOP and OP program, I transitioned to doing GA meetings, which I've already been doing, but full-time GA meetings weekly, daily and weekly. Um, and then I established a connection with Will Hinman, also at Maryland Center for Excellence on Problem Gambling. And I still have that connection with Will today. And I, but also I had a bit of a slip up during my recovery process in 2025. I had relapsed in February of 2025. Um, and then I got caught by my mom relapsing. Um, and then I could just see the reaction on her face when she saw that I had gone back and done that again. And that really drove me even further in my process to stay away from gambling. And so I've been gambling clean now for over 4 months now. I've been doing the GA meetings. I have established a great connection with Will, as I previously mentioned. I have an awesome therapist who I talk to on a weekly basis, and she helps keep me accountable and away from gambling. I've had no gambling thoughts, um, and I feel much better now than I did over a year ago when I was in this slippery hell that I was in. Um, Ever since I ended my time in rehab, I have developed a new relationship with my girlfriend. She's been awesome to me. I've finished college. I graduated from Penn State University with a degree in political science. I've developed new activities. I'm a soccer referee. I enjoy doing that very much. Um, I go to the gym. I do a bunch of other things with friends and family that help um, take up time and find myself a purpose. I've started a job recently with Maryland Coalition of Families to help other people that are in similar situations like me get the help and support that they deserve. And I'm thankful to them for giving me an opportunity to help others because I know how it was like in those shoes at one time to be helpless and not know where to turn. And I'm happy that I can do that for other people, provide the resources, support, and help they deserve. Um, the one thing that I would share that is important for people to know is that you're not alone. There's help out there. There's people that want to help you. You don't need to suffer in silence um, and not have the resources you need to help yourself in your journey. Um, there's friends, there's family, there's resources out there. There's the Maryland Center for Excellence in Problem Gambling. There's Maryland Coalition of Families. There's therapists. There's counselors. There's people out there that are willing to help you. And there's also a voluntary exclusion program that I did as soon as I finished rehab. It helps to keep you accountable. Right when I finished my trip to Richmond and did my rehab, I went to the casino and immediately self-excluded and got resources for help. That's always available to you. So just the most important thing, don't suffer alone. Be transparent. I know it's hard to talk up. I know I often had times where I was in silence and not disclosing what was really going through. But it felt so much better to get it off my back and to chart a path forward than just hold on to it. So that's what I would say is the most important thing. And I'd like to thank you guys again for letting me share this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. You have shared such an incredible journey of developing risky gambling behaviors. We are very, very grateful. We also celebrate with you that you were able to finish college and move on in your life. But you talk, both you and Matt S., about the incredible importance of getting help. And so we thank you so much, and we just wish you well 1 second, 1 minute, 1 day, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. Thank you. And
Thank
so
you.
next, you're welcome. And so next, I'm going to share what are important resources for help. As our speakers have shared, gambling, addiction, risky gambling behaviors, problem gambling does not discriminate. It affects every individual of different ethnic backgrounds, different visible racial backgrounds, social statuses, occupations, educational levels, families, etc., communities. And regardless of what your background or what your life is, we want you to know that hope is available. And so these are the resources that are available in the state of Maryland for gambling care. Feel free to reach out to the Maryland Council of Problem Gambling. We are a 501c3 grassroots nonprofit, and what we try to do is to increase public awareness, such as the programming that you are listening to. We also develop partnerships with other organizations and community stakeholders. We also try to provide advocacy so that people, including legislators and others, understand what is needed to help people. And we also want to get people linked to assistance in the state of Maryland. Another great resource that you've heard is also the University of Maryland School of Medicine, Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling, that has funded this webinar. And we're really grateful to have the Faith Initiative contract, which is offered through Behavioral Health Administration and the University of Maryland Center of Excellence. What's really great about the Center of Excellence is that you can contact them, and you have heard our speakers talk about the peer recovery staff members. They are available to provide you support wherever you are, whether it's virtual support, whether it's meeting you wherever you are. And we also want you to know that there is free gambling treatment in the state of Maryland. Many people who are trained in gambling addiction are available to provide you care and to help you understand what are the things and the influences that got you to the place of developing risky gambling behaviors. And so the Maryland Center of Excellence is uh, located at www.mdproblemgambling.com. Also, we have a 1-800 crisis helpline so that you can contact and talk to someone who will provide you support. And the number that is available for crisis 24/7 is 1-800-MY-RESET. Let me say that number again, 1-800-MY-RESET. And they are trained volunteers and may include professionals as well who will listen to you in a confidential way and provide you the support, hope, and get you linked to ongoing support in your community. We also want you to be aware of Gamblers Anonymous, and you can also find them if you Google Gamblers Anonymous. They are available to provide you virtual meeting support as well as support in person at the meetings that are available to you. We also have a advocacy support for affected others that are friends, family members, may even be employers, etc., called Gam-Anon. Gam-Anon is similar to Al-Anon, which is available for people with alcohol problems. And you have Nal-Anon, which is for drug problems, and we have Gam-Anon for gambling problems. And this is a peer recovery support of family members and affected others that come together to encourage the affected others. There's also the Maryland Coalition of Families that Benjamin is working with now, and they can be located at www.mdcoalition.org. There's also a wonderful technology support called Evive app. The Evive app was started by Sam DeMello, who is a person with lived experience of gambling addiction. Sam will tell his story. You can find him on YouTube. And Sam was a technology professional, and he decided to create a technology support because he felt that a lot of people, because of the shame and the stigma, would be afraid, which is true, to seek support in person. And so the Avive app is available uh, using your device, whether it's a computer device or your telephone. And the first year is a free subscription. I do work with the Avive app as a board member. And so I'm very excited to see that this is a technology support for people who may need to start there. And it provides you a gambling recovery community that you can access around the clock. We also want you to know that there's a new organization that I'm excited to be also a part of. It's called FOG, Lift the Fog. This is the family and friends of gamblers. And we use the word people who are affected by gambling. We want people to know that it's identity first, but just for short, it's called FOG, Family and Friends of Gamblers. And this is available as membership for free at www.hurtbygambling.org. And so we encourage you to reach out for support. I am an internationally certified gambling counselor, and I can tell you from the time that I have been supporting people over the course of 3 decades, this is what I say to people. You're not alone. And the most important thing and tip is to stay in the process. When you start getting treatment, when you start going to meetings, when you reach out for help, it is going to be very painful for you, but you're already in pain. The difference is you're not alone. Try not to leave the process early. We want you to know that the longer you keep coming back, which is what 12-step recovery meetings always say, keep coming back. Once you keep coming back, you will experience healing 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. So we're grateful for our speakers. Feel free to follow up with us, the Maryland Council of Problem Gambling. We're located at www.marylandproblemgambling.org. Thank you, everyone. And we want everyone to feel encouraged. Help is available. Take care. Be well.